I want to live in a world where the police do not murder black people. Where the police do not murder black people, where the police do not murder black people, where the police do not murder black people, police do not murder black people, police do not murder black people, please do not murder black people, police do not murder black people, police do not murder black people, please do not murder black people, please do not murder black people. When the state decides to murder its next black child, do not go gentle. Do not hold hands and sing, "We shall overcome." Do not turn the other cheek. Remind them of the shotgun in your throat. Tell them there will be no more. Do not tell them other everything will be okay. It will not. Her chest will be an empty rum barrel, a broken whiskey bottle, an oversung gospel song. She will manage to go on. Black folks seem to always do, but honestly, who should have to go on like this? The father will be strong. He will fight back tears in public. He will cry in a back room or in a basement or somewhere else safe like that. He will probably listen to too much Donnie or Roberta or Stevie or Miles or someone else safe like that. Reimagine the vigils. Think about the irony in cutting down yet another flower to honor that child's beautiful life. Pay close attention to when the state says this is a time for peace. They probably are admitting that when they fired the first gun, it was clearly a time of war. Do not go silent. Do not be gentle. Do not turn the other cheek. Do not make another beautiful black ballad to be used in yet another shitty movie about racism 3 decades from now. Do not turn the other cheek. Do not whisper unless it's for strategy. Show them your fangs, your claws. Be the monster they always thought you were. Show them the hurt. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. This hurts. It hurts. When the state decides to murder its next black child, remind them of the shotgun, of all the ways it hurts.
You are a national poetry slam champion. I think you won 2 times or 3 times?
2 times.
2 times, 2003, 2004. What do you think a poem goes viral? Why do you think a poem has this ability to be so resonant?
I think there's a number of things, there's a number of reasons, right? Partly chance, right? Like, so part of it is chance, right? Like, you just have to have the right poem at the right time, right? And I'll use my poem as an example of right poem at right time. My poem about trying to teach my nephew what it means to navigate the state apparatus becomes a very important piece for many people at this particular moment, right? Like, I hate that though about it, right? Like, my poem keeps getting hits because we keep getting hit. I think another part of it has to do with poems that by and large anybody with half a bit of sense can go, yeah, I can agree with that, right? Like, you know, racism is bad, of course, right? Like, sexism is bad, right? Like, homophobia is bad, like inequality is bad. And so any of these poems that are going viral, for the most part, they're saying things it's hard to argue with if you're a rational human being, right? Like, again, and I want to emphasize the rational part, right? So like inequality is bad is essentially what a lot of these poems are saying, right? Like, and it's like, yeah, I agree. We should be equal, right? And so that's a part of it. I think another part of it, and this is something that I've been thinking through right now, is the ways in which they create community, right? And they show us that community is not necessarily spatial or geographical, right? But becomes topical. And it becomes this important thing to where we can create communities when our own physical communities fail us. The internet gives us a way to find virtual communities that will pick up for where the physical community fails.
Do you think that community building quality is more connected to the performance poetry than to the more traditional kind of poetry?
I think it's easier, right? And the reason why I think it's easier, there's a few reasons, right? One, because it's viewable, it's right there, it's easy to grab and take and go, that's easy to digest. I can get down with that. I think performance poetry has, the brilliance of it is that it has a lower threshold than a lot of page and published poetry, right? And so that it asks everyone to come. So our audience are often bigger, right? Because we're like, everyone's invited. Look, I've never taken a creative writing class in my life 20-year-old me would have been laughed out of creative writing classes, right? And I think that that's an important thing, that spoken word communities invited me in and allowed me to grow to the writer that I think I am today, to the writer that I hope to be next 10 years and continually grow.
You have been described as this kind of hybrid between the academic poet, because you are a professor at,
Right.
In San Francisco, but also you are like you're a poet in the performance poet. Do you like that label, this kind of hybrid between the two worlds? Do you think it's another way of stereotyping?
I think the hybrid is interesting. I understand the possibilities in hybridity, right? In that it allows me to go back and forth. The problem with hybridity and thinking about going back and forth is that we reinforce, I think, arbitrary borders and boundaries,
Yes,
right?
I agree.
And for me, they're very arbitrary, right? Like, yeah, I don't think of myself every day as going back and forth, right? There are some days where I literally will teach from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I'll do a couple of classes, I'll have some office hours, I'll mentor some undergrads and grad students, have a meeting, and then I'll leave and go to an open mic or a spoken word performance venue in the Bay Area right after. That's a normal day for me, and I don't think of myself as crossing boundaries or as crossing worlds, right? I think of myself as an individual who's wholly complex and complicated and contradictory and messy and confusing at times. I mean, there are moments in which I have to think about myself in that way because it's generative, right? Because it allows me to do certain things, and right, like I could write myself, like if I was to write a grant or something, I could, and someone wanted to, right? I could talk about myself as a hybrid being, as going across
You can package yourself in that way.
Yeah, it's about packaging and producting, framing the stuff. But I don't think of myself because I don't believe in again reinforcing these arbitrary boundaries. I think they're absurd.
Something that I find interesting is that when we talk about this, well, he's a hybrid between the performance poetry and the academic poetry, or the street poetry and the academic poetry. I think there is like a preconception or like a stereotyping in the sense of, well, you come from South Central LA, is that right?
Born and raised in South Central.
Yes, so it's like the good boy stereotyping. Or he comes from this neighborhood. He was able to do a master's degree, a PhD. He's now a professor in San Francisco, and I think from the outside we create this kind of dichotomy that is not really there.
Part of it is we love a good pull yourself up by your own bootstraps narrative, right? Like it's the American concept of like, look how, if you with a much hard work can make it to, it's BS, right? There's a series of social circumstances that had I made one false step, I could have been had an entirely different life. And in many ways I've been fortunate and lucky and had people that looked out for me in ways that isn't always afforded to everyone else, right? When you come from a different kind of socioeconomic background, you have more people looking out for you. Look, everybody from teenage on to like mid-20s will make a series of dumb mistakes. That's what humans do, right? Like that's what I'm certain of. I taught at Northwestern and I've watched those students make a bunch of dumb mistakes. When I taught at USC, they make a bunch of dumb mistakes. But that's what we do as college students, right? I think the difference is that we afford people different amounts of mistakes and they have a different kind of network that will back them for when they fall to pick them back up. And we believe in this dichotomy. We believe that South Central is bad, and that's an absurd concept. I grew up in 1980 South Central. That's the height of the gang epidemic, the height of the crack epidemic, right? And I've seen a lot of things that probably a child should never see. That's fine, right? But South Central was also beautiful in many ways in 1980s, right? There was a way in which, I was able to grow up in a Black community that was about saving me. And in many ways, when I was at Northwestern, which is in Evanston, Illinois, right? Which is in a sort of a higher economic neighborhood, right? I remember telling my students I felt safer in South Central growing up than I did in Evanston right now. And there's we don't think about that kind of thing, partially because I think we think about the entire country in sort of a very sort of, for lack of a better way of putting it, a white middle American kind of way, and we don't think that there's other possibilities of being, and there are, and there's so many other ways of being and performing in this world.
I taught in South Central LA from 91 to 93. I work in an elementary school.
Which one?
Main Street Elementary School.
I'm familiar.
And it was the year of the riots. It was the riots happening in 92,
Right.
I believe, in the springtime. And it was, I just came to Los Angeles from Spain, and I was teaching there, and that was historically for me, it was like, oh my God, this is what was happening here.
Right.
It was an amazing time.
Yeah, and I grew up there, right? So when everyone else saw it on TV, I looked out the window. I walked outside, right? And that's a very different way of understanding it. So I get it, right? I actually refer to them as uprisings, and it's a political choice that I make. When the legal system fails you, you have to respond in some kind of way. And so I was there. I was there.
You have a very good story that you basically started as a poet by lying to a woman.
Right. I don't know if it was lying, but it was a very beautiful young high school girl who came to me and was like, hey, I heard you write poetry. And in my mind, I was about to be like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard, right? Like, what are you talking about? But then she immediately, I go, what? And she's like, yeah, that's the sexiest thing ever. And I was like, I write poems, what's up, girl? And that's how I started. That's literally, I went home that night and wrote a love poem for her, and I'm pretty sure it was awful.
So you wrote your first poem as a response to this seduction game. But what I want to ask you is, what happened to you when you wrote your first poem or your first poems?
So after I wrote that poem and came back and read it to her, and she was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I realized how powerful, poetry is and can be. However bad that poem was or not, right? And I began to write more of them and more of them and more of them. And then what ends up happening after that is I was introduced to poets at the same time by a teacher of mine in high school, Florence Avignon, who I still remember to this day, who I still keep in touch with to this day. A few years ago, or a few years back, she actually won California Teacher of the Year award because so many students were impacted by her, and she has had an impact on students that have been incredible. I ended up writing a 4 or 5 page letter to the committee saying I would not have a PhD if not for this woman. When she introduced me to poets from the Harlem Renaissance and from the Black Arts movement and some beat poets, and I was like, this stuff is incredible. And then, seeing that kind of poetry from those folks, right, be it Langston, be it Amiri Baraka, be it Ginsberg, be it whoever, right, I began to want to write about political stuff as well. Right, and I began to write about my surrounding community. So I began to write about abject poverty. I began to write about gangs. I began to write about drugs, selling and using. I began to write about police brutality, things that I saw in my everyday life, and it just sort of expanded from there. And I just kept on writing even as an undergrad. Then I was given a book by a team member of mine. I was doing speech and debate.
Yes.
And a teammate of mine gave me a book called Burning Down the House, which had the 1998 New York Slam team, which won the championship that year. And I read that book and I said to myself, whatever they're doing, I want to do too. The book just blew my mind, right? And then I began to write in their voice, right? Because that's partially what happens, right? You see people that you like and you mock them. And I began to write in their voice as I began to search for my own, right? And I had another friend, a competitor of mine by the name of Armando Roman. Armando said, I know you're writing this spoken word, slam style, whatever it is, kind of poetry. You should come to a poetry venue with me. And in the summer of 2001, at the beginning of the summer of 2001, we went to a venue where we watched a send-off for the LA Slam teams, the SoCal Slam teams, as they went off to nationals. And that's when I met the folks like Shihan and Jamel and Poetry and Omari Hardwick and NQ and Gina Loring. That night, I was like, this is incredible, oh my gosh. And then as they went off, I ended up going to a smaller venue in Silver Lake throughout the summer called 33 1/3, hosted by Jerry Quigley. And as I kept reading there, a poet by the name of Best Kept, who runs A Mic and Dim Lights in Pomona, was there as well as Sekou. They would come there as well, and they would work out poems, and they would use that as their kind of, exercise space, as their kind of workout space, where they would then, perfect a poem or get it to a place where they wanted it to be and then perform it elsewhere. It was a workshop kind of venue, and they looked at me and go, "You're ready, you should go to DPL." And I went to DPL the following week, and poetry put me up, and DPL has been my home ever since.
Wow. And there's a reading every Tuesday?
Every Tuesday night,
9 p.m.
9 p.m. Get there ridiculously early because it packs house, and that's a beautiful thing. That's the beautiful thing that I think the DPL is doing, right? Is that it's promoting poetry in a way that a lot of spaces or institutions or venues isn't able to do. We're bringing in 200 to 300 people a week to hear poetry. That's an incredible number.
It's an incredible number.
That's an incredible number. If you think about it, we're talking over 1,000 people a month to hear poetry. That's an incredible number, considering that, you know...
With great passion.
With great passion. Considering that a few decades ago, poetry was probably at its lowest, right? When academics hijacked it and said, this is what constitutes poetry, and if you don't like it, that means you're not smart enough to understand it, right? And then what happened is people were like, well, you know, I'm turned off by that. I don't want to be a part of that. And then, you know, slam, you know, is a device. It really is a trick, right? It's a device, I think, that gets people interested in poetry. The competition of it, to say I'm the best at this, right, gets people out there because, you know, Americans, we want to compete at something, right? Like, we got to compete. That's what we do. It's a trick, right? It gets people interested in poetry. Dana Gioia talks about this in his book, Can Poetry Matter? Former chair of the National Endowment of the Arts, that whatever slam poets figured out, they figured out something, which is how to get people interested in poetry again. And I think DPL is doing that. The other thing that I think slam is doing is it gives us a way for these wayward spoken word poets to have a community. Right? To have a community, right? To say we belong together, right? We are all writing, we're all learning. And the final thing that I think it does, that I think is important, is it gives us a way to institutionalize. We think of institutions as like larger, long-standing things, but they get their birth somewhere. Right? They have to. That's how it works, right? What spoken word and performance poetry and in the slam as a competition is doing is, you know, we become teachers for each other and of each other. And I mentor poets who are now mentoring other poets. So there are poets who are creating youth spaces for the youth, right? Be it Say Word.LA, be it Get Lit, right? You have these, and there's other places throughout the world. Youth Speaks, there's Louder Than the Bomb, there's Urban Word in New York, there's so many, UW in Wisconsin, right? There's so many of these adult poets who are now creating spaces for youth, and these are institution building methods whereby which we're teaching each other how to do something. And I think we're getting better and better to the point that you're now seeing more spoken word poets, performance poets, poets who started out on the stage really profoundly just force their way into publishing communities and have respect. I think about Dinesh Smith. I think about Sam Sachs. I think about Patricia Smith even before them, right? You think about these poets who started out this way and are like just literally blowing up the space.
How is the way of delivery informing the building of the poem?
For me, it does quite a bit, right? I often write in my body, I tell people, you know what I mean? And what I mean by that is, you know, there are moments, there are often like days where I'll drive and I'll write a poem while I'm driving, like in my head. I'm playing with words and how it sounds. And then there are times when I don't feel like I even finish a poem until I've read it on stage a few times, felt it in my body in front of people, and then go back to edit things that I didn't like and change things and alter things and you know, and play with it a bit, depending, not necessarily because I'm looking for crowd reaction, more because I'm trying to feel and understand how my body felt in that space when I read the poem, right? And that's a part of it all. But then there are poems that I don't share at all, that I just don't perform in front of people. I write a lot. And most of the things I write will never see a performance stage.
Many of your poems have this I don't know how to say, like a conversation structure. For example, you have one is a letter from Michael Jackson to Justin Bieber. There's another letter from Malcolm X, is that right?
It's the conversation, it's my imagined conversation between Malcolm X and his daughter.
Even the poem, "'Cause He's Black", is basically a conversation with your nephew. So there's a lot of, I don't know, like a dialectic nature in your poetry.
I don't think of it in terms of dialectic, but it's certainly something to continually think about why it is that I'm invested in always going back to that, right? There are things that I do have that are very sort of through lines in a lot of poems that I have. Like almost every love poem I write, a relationship poem or something, will always mention some spirituality, will always mention God. Like I don't think I have a single love poem or poem that deals in the erotics or the intimacies of relationships that don't mention God. You know, for me, God is love, and the closest that I think, in my opinion, that we can get to a higher power is in our love between each other kind of thing.
I was going to say, if you could understand your poetry without a political edge or a political statement.
Trying to find a poem without politics is in and of itself a politics, right? And that in and of itself is a political position, right? Apolitical is a political position, right? And I think that that's the case. I was at an academic conference, you know, recently, and there was some reading of poems. It was a 100th anniversary academic conference, and they were reading poems from 1914. There was a poem, and I can't remember the name of the poem, and I kind of been looking for it, and I just can't. But it was all about how poetry shouldn't be about politics. It should be about nature, about trees, about beauty, about love, and yada, yada, yada. And it was interesting because I said something in the Q&A session. I was like, you know, it's weird that you want me to think about trees in 1914, and it's hard for me to think about the trees in 1914 without thinking about the black bodies that swung from them. And the room got very, you know, silent. Historically disenfranchised communities, be they feminist movements, black communities, brown communities, Asian communities within this country, and various others, have often used art and poetry as a means of freedom, as a means of justice, as a means of propelling towards some sort of a more equal and safer kind of world. It's a playful poem. It's called A Few Thoughts on What Happens to All the Black People in the Futuristic Sci-Fi Movies, or What Did Y'all Do to Us, or Nah, I Really Want to Know Because I'm Black. In the year 2025, we regress back to apes. Apparently, we go through the process of de-evolution described by Charles Darwin's younger but less talented brother Richard, or Dick Darwin, if you nasty. Dick did something to us, and I'm gonna figure out what exactly it is that he did. Or in the year 2031, when hip hop finally goes the way of rock and roll, the last black rap artist, MC Zimmer Man, will be recording his single for his multi-platinum selling hit. He every time he yells out, "Where are my real niggas at?" no black people respond. Instead, we disappear each time he asks, one by one. The government never looks into the case of missing black people because they don't care. Ask Afeni Shakur or Valletta Wallace or any black mother in 1980s Atlanta. Hell, ask any black mother ever. Or in the year 2047, during the inevitable coming zombie apocalypse, zombies, much like humans, quickly realize they too prefer dark meat. They say it's juicier, that it has more flavor. If you get close enough, you can even hear them mumbling things like, "Once you go black, you never go back." Or in the year 2054, when the world finally gives out on us, when we finally screw up the ozone layer, the world leaders unite to initiate Project Blackout. They say the ozone layer is failing us, so we need to build colonies on Mars. And we built these ships they called Amistad to take us there. Every time we board those ships, they only launch the ones with black people on them. Some white people actually end up on Black Mars on accident. But this is the price you must finally pay to have that finally true white Christmas. Other white people like Michael Richards or Justin Bieber or even Vanilla Ice get shipped to Black Mars just to mess with black people one last time. The next day's headlines will read, "Projects got the blacks out, a complete success." Or in the year 2084, the world leaders, which is really the US leaders, effectively makes it illegal to actually be black. Which, if you think about it, ain't that different than what happened in 2054, or 2034, or 2004, 1994, 1964, 1874. The only difference between 1814 and 2014 is that our government is more honest with why they chain black people. Handcuffs are shinier than shackles for a reason. It makes you forget the messy of it all. Or, in 2015, we finally wake up. We realize that we can make movies about everything. We make movies about talking animals. We make movies where we save the world from robots and aliens and monsters. We've made 2 Sharknadoes. Literally, a movie about a flying tornado of sharks. We even made a movie where Woody Allen asked us to imagine Owen Wilson simply walking to 1920s Paris. No time machine, no magic powers. He just walked down the street to 1920s Paris. But what we seemingly cannot imagine, what the movie industry will not ask us to imagine, is a world where black people are surviving, living, smiling, dancing, laughing, loving, breathing, just breathing. We cannot imagine that. Because for far too many, black people choosing to live, refusing to die, somehow threatens their daily lives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was great to have you here.